Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG Podcast. I'm Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course, author interviews. This is episode 60 of the podcast. That's right, we actually hit episode 60. This week, I have 8 new LitRPG reviews just for you folks. We're going to begin with Hero of Naught. After that, it'll be Life in the North, an Apocalyptic LitRPG. Then after that, it'll be Dream 3. Then after that, it'll be Times of Change, Emerialia book 7, and then it'll be From the Bowels of Hounds, a Caverns and Creatures short story. Then it will be DLC, a LitRPG Adventure, which is the 6th book in the Crucible shard series. And then after that, it will be The Last Redoubt. And finally, of course, last but not least, it will be Codename Freedom Survive Week 1. Okay, but of course, we're beginning our show with LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news this week, we are going to begin with a very touching story from Blaze Corbin. Apparently, he's planning to attend DragonCon in Atlanta this August, just like I am. But he's actually thought about cosplaying as a certain godcat from Ascend Online for Travis Bagwell. Just to push himself firmly into this decision, however, he set up a charity fundraiser for Shriners Hospital for Children through Indiegogo and generosity.com. He had a goal of $200 that had to be reached in order to confirm that he would actually do the cosplay for sure. He had planned to put on a mask, a cat mask, wear a nice t-shirt, whatever. But people wanted to see him so much to do this thing that they gave the money away already, and he's blown past that goal. He's nearly at $600 as of this recording. And he already has to wear face paint and not just a cat mask. And now the stretch goals for the project are to get him to raise enough money to force him to dance with strangers while in costume and being captured on video. So this is just a fun, nice way of making Blaze do fun, crazy things that'll be recorded for posterity. But also you're giving money to a charity. So it's a win-win for everybody. So go donate and see Blaze dance like a cat on a hot tin roof. We'll have a link in the show notes for that particular campaign, or we can just look at it at generosity.com. Gift to Shriners Hospital, Children Prank, BC. There you go. Okay. Also, speaking of DragonCon, apparently, I didn't know this, but they have a Best Novel award system, or they have a bunch of awards for novels that have come out called the Dragon Awards. And you can nominate your author or your novel until July the 24th. I don't think authors are allowed to nominate themselves, but fans of their work can nominate their stuff. So I figured there's going to be a bunch of LitRPG authors there at DragonCon this year. Wouldn't it be cool if one of us won like one of these awards? I think it would. We'll have a link in the show notes so you can go nominate anybody that you want to nominate for this award. It is completely open submissions, and all the awards are based upon who gets the most votes, basically. So there you go. You have until July 24th to submit your nominations. We'll have a link in the show notes. It's also just at applications.dragoncon.org. Fan award nominations. You can look it up, do a search for it. But again, link in show notes is probably easier. Okay, on to Aileron Kong. Aileron Kong's website, litrpg.com, has a new forum section. And to celebrate that new forum section, Aileron is going to do an AMA, an Ask Me Anything, exclusively there for the people who register and sign up for the forum, basically. It'll be Saturday, July the 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and he's going to answer the questions with the most likes. So this is kind of a way of promoting and letting everybody know that there is a forum outside of Facebook or Twitter or wherever where people can go and talk about LitRPG stuff. There's also one on Reddit, which I think is mildly popular, but this one is straight from Aileron's webpage of litrpg.com. So there you go. Okay. Also, Jeff Hayes was nice enough to pass along information that Delvers LLC book 1 is actually going to be on sale currently until July the 15th. Now, he, in his original post on Facebook, he said that it was $5. When I checked yesterday, it was $7 for some reason. I mean, I've already purchased it. So that is what it is. But if it's cheap, if it's inexpensive, it's a lot less than the normal $20 price tag. It's always a good deal. And, Jeff Hayes does a really good job of narrating the story, and it's a good story. So, there you go. You have no excuse to not go purchase it. It's as inexpensive as an actual novel in audio form, though. Okay, now speaking of audiobook, we have one new LitRPG audiobook that came out this week. It is Area of Effect, The Crucible Shard, Book 5, a story I remember reviewing, I think, last month, and it's already out as an audiobook. So Skylar Grant is really doing a quick turnaround for all those audiobooks, so good for him. Out now. These stories came out this week. I haven't had a chance to review them, but I wanted to let you know about them in case you needed new things to read. Headshot, One in the Gut, Book 1, a Zombie LitRPG Trilogy, came out this week. I guess the author means for it to be a trilogy, but this is the first book in that trilogy. Then there's Vengeance over Vanaheim, a LitRPG Saga, Valhalla Online Book 3. I've read and reviewed Book 22. I enjoyed them both. Looking forward to reading Book 3. And then Nagant Wars, Pawn Sacrifice. Now this is Book 2 from friend of the podcast. And Book 1 had a lot of criticisms, good and bad. There was some controversy around it, but I definitely look forward to reading Book 2. I just couldn't get to it this week because I had 8 other novels to read, and this one popped up. So there you go. Now, in upcoming LitRPG, this is just where I read off all the stuff that's coming out in the next this month, rest of this month, all of August. So skip ahead if you don't want to hear a list. But there are some new additions to that list, actually. On July the 14th, The First Planet, The Space Masters 1. On July the 15th, Kingdom Level 3. On the 17th of July, The Long Road to Karn, Realm of Arkham Book 5. On the 19th, this one's new, The Luckless, an MMORPG adventure. The author asked me to let you guys know that the pre-order version of this is on sale for 99 cents. The regular version will be like $3.99 apparently, and it'll be on Kindle Limited. Then on the 28th of July, it'll be Stratus Online Awakening. And then on the 31st of July, it'll be A Slave in the Locked Lands. This is book 2 in the Weirdest Noob series. August the 1st, this one's new as well to the list. Office Wars, Bathroom Politics. That's the second book in that series. Enjoyed the first book immensely. Then also on August the 1st, it'll be Rapid Play. On the 4th of August, it'll be The Glitch Fiends, Part 2, Hell's Glitch Book 3, which is always a weird combination of numbers to me. Then on the 15th of August, Pharaoh Book 4. Also on the 15th of August, The Last Warrior Unigaya. On the 22nd of August, it'll be Shards of Reality. And then also, it'll be Supermassive Overlord Space Masters Book 2 will also be out in August. And on the August the 30th, it'll be Shaman's Revenge, Way of the Shaman Book 6. So there you go. Now on to new releases and reviews. And in new releases and reviews, ready to begin with a review of Hero of Naught, written by Jeffrey Falcon Logue. He's the author of the Slime Dungeon Chronicles. Okay, I will read you the author's description. The future is here. A century after human AI wars, the two races have settled together in a country for peace. From their mutual cooperation, science has exploded once again into a revolution of new ideas. At the forefront is the newest and most advanced game ever to exist, Everlife. Platt was a senior in the academy when he first began his adventures into the game world. After years of suffering from his betters, he now had a chance to shine in a world where everyone was equal, unless his troubles follow him into the world. And Everlife isn't just what it was advertised to be. Will Platt survive in both the real world and in the game world as he struggles against his oppressors, or will he fall into corruption and take back what is owed to him? So there you go. That's the author's description of this novel. It is 227 pages. It is $4.49. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. So page count wise, the price, it's about 2 cents per page, which again is a little more expensive than I normally pay, but it's available on Kindle Unlimited, so there's less risk. Now, for those of you who actually pre-ordered this novel, who got it on like day one, there was a technical issue where the author accidentally uploaded a version of the novel with a single page, and that's what they got. He fixed the issue as soon as he could, but some people, again, got that one-page version of it, and they haven't been able to update it. Amazon has actually agreed to push a novel update, but you have to go to your managed content page on your Amazon account to get it. Additionally, Apollo Thorne suggests you may have to delete the cookies, so to speak, from the app before downloading it or for re-downloading it. He has the same problem, I guess, when he edits his own work. After each version, he has to clean out the app and then reload it. So there you go. And he said you can look on Google for ways of deleting cookies in the app. to do it. But of course, Amazon's update should fix you right up. So there you go. Now, again, this story is written by the author of the Slime Ninja Chronicles. And I think it was one of the first, not the first short story that Falcon wrote on the Royal Road. And it kind of shows. I think I remember I did an author interview with him once. And he said that he's written a lot of stuff, and the Slime Ninja Chronicles is probably his most recent work. And he's really proud of that. But when he goes back in time and he looks at the first things he's written, including, I think, this one, he kind of cringed when he first reread it because it was very rough. And he's learned a lot about writing apparently since then. And he decided, though, to clean this up, to try to rework it a little bit, to make it a little more understandable, readable, and to put it out as an actual novel. However, the core of the story still reflects that early learning curve of writing for him. And again, it's not a bad story in any way. It's just compared to some of his later works, it lacks focus and planning, and you can tell. The first 40% of the story is kind of a mix of high school teen drama with the excitement of getting a new VR MMORPG. There's descriptions of a far-flung future where everyone is ranked and educated according to some RPG-like system, which I thought was really cool. There are stats like where students are judged by body, soul, mind, and it kind of branches off on their various parts of their study curriculum, and also it will affect their job prospects later in life. And again, I liked this concept. It kind of brings RPG rules into a modern world. Unfortunately, it just really isn't developed. Most of the time is spent in the game. And when this kind of stratification of the society is described, it's really used as a way of explaining why the main character is separated from his childhood friends and why he is bullied in school, basically. So there you go. It kind of replaces your normal social class divisions, unfortunately. And that's kind of it. I was hoping for more. Now, the game, Everlife, in the novel it's okay. It's fine. It's a fantasy world with an adaptive AI system. In the real world, again, artificial intelligence is a thing, and there was some AI war, but there are a whole community of artificial intelligence that have worked with humans to create this, really cool game. And AIs are actually in this game, but you really don't see them. I mean, you see them in the form of developers or game masters a little bit, but they're also supposed to be NPCs or other players, and there's no way to differentiate, so it kind of loses its meaning a little bit. Again, it could have been kind of a cool story to tell about trying to figure out the difference between artificial intelligence and regular humans when both are in a digital domain. And if that matters, maybe he could have fallen in love or made friends and, oh, you're an AI, what do I do with this kind of thing. None of that was developed, but this kind of keeps coming up in the story. They're really cool kernels of ideas or maybe slightly developed versions of them, but they're never really fully developed to their full potential. And again, it's the first thing that he ever wrote, I think, and published on the Royal Road. And so there are always going to be cool ideas that he may not just have the tools at the time to kind of develop. The game itself, fairly standard with switchable classes, the ability for anyone to learn any skills and spells. The main character chooses to be a spear and shield user, which is on the cover, and it's cool. I like that. Most of the first part of the story in the game is really just him exploring the game world, its mechanics, gaining levels, learning magic, raising his reputation with NPCs, standard stuff. Then, at the 40% mark, though, the story really does take a dark turn, and it's kind of hinted at in the story description, but it becomes a story of revenge. Like, bad things happen to the main character. He's betrayed. He seeks revenge for the wrongs done to him. He undergoes physical changes as well, both in real life and in the game. I'm not going to spoil if you want to read it. But from here on then, it's him as a dark character stuck in the game, going on quest, gaining new abilities, companions, killing mobs, all to gain him the power that he wants to get revenge on the jerks that wronged him. And again, potentially cool. The revenge story has a lot of possibilities. However, the revenge doesn't take place. And this is, again, one of those things. There's a ton of potential there, and it's just not developed in this particular novel. I'm not sure if there's more story to this, but the main character doesn't get his revenge. He talks about getting revenge, and it's really impressed upon the reader. That's kind of his new reason for existing in this digital domain where he's trapped in the game. But it was a little disappointing to see that it didn't actually come to fruition. There is some very interesting, spirit of vengeance stuff happening in the story where the main character, because of the way he looks, kind of takes on the persona of, almost Ghost Rider, the spirit of vengeance, and righting wrongs within the game for the artificial AI community, for battered women or whatever. And that's kind of cool, of course. But again, there's no real satisfaction or resolution for the main character's revenge that he needs to kind of move on with his life. And at the very end, it just kind of ends. And it feels like a break in like a longer serial story, which it may be. I don't know. I haven't read it online, so I don't know if that's going to be the case or if there's going to be a book 2 or whatever. But for me, it was just, it was okay. I like the game stuff. It's a neat world. And again, there are a lot of cool potential story ideas here. They were just never really fully fleshed out or developed. And again, the quest and the fighting in the story, they're fine. They're okay. They're not, they're not amazing, but they're not bad either. And it's just, there didn't seem like there was an overall plan for this particular novel as the author was writing it. It just felt like, oh, this is what I'm writing today. And, what happens in the future. Which is how a lot of us start off. I know I did. And it is what it is. So there you go. It's okay. It's not bad, but it's not amazing either. It gets a score of 6 out of 10. Okay, on to our next story, A Life in the North, an apocalyptic LitRPG, The System Apocalypse, Book 1. These long titles sometimes. It is written by Tao Wong. Okay, I will read you the author description. All John wanted to do was get away from his life in the Klon National Park for a weekend. Hike, camp, and chill. Instead, the world comes to an end in a series of blue boxes. Animals start evolving and monsters start spawning. Now he has to survive the apocalypse, get back to civilization, and not lose his mind. Life in the North is book 1 of The System Apocalypse, a LitRPG apocalypse book that combines modern-day life, science fiction, and fantasy elements along with game mechanics. Okay, this is 334 pages, $4.99, available on Kindle Unlimited. I think it's priced about appropriately. Now, this author is actually the same author as A Healer's Gift, which I reviewed a couple weeks ago. Good story, and this one kind of reflects the same kind of style of writing. The same issues I had with that story are here as well. I'll talk about in a little bit. But again, this was originally a story on the Royal Road. You can actually read the first chapters of book 2 if you go there. We'll have a link in the show notes, of course, and in the review if you want to go check out kind of a hint at what happens in book 2. Okay, my description of the story. John is having a bad day. He's out camping after losing a job. His house burns down. His girlfriend leaves him. He wakes up to the world he knows has ended, being turned into an RPG system. Because he's in a high-level zone, he gets several big perks, chooses a magical companion, a fairy named Ali, and has to survive. So I kind of emphasize the survival a little bit more. Okay, this novel is mostly a running journal of what the main character John does when the world he knows ends and an RPG wind takes over. It's 1 part survival, it's 1 part adventure, RPG adventure, and 1 part community building. I kind of broke it into those 3 because those are kind of the 3 core ideas of the story. And again, there's no big plot scheme here. Nobody's trying to save the world. Nobody's trying to stop the apocalypse. Nobody's trying to find the zombie cure or anything. It's not that kind of survival story. It's very much him trying to survive from the very beginning. And I'll read you what I thought about each particular kind of theme in this story. The survival story part. The world becomes a heck of a lot more dangerous when humans aren't the greatest threat anymore. In this world, no more animals are mutating into terrible beasts, and there are new monsters that the game system drops in the world. These monsters can spawn anywhere that's not a safe zone. A special system designated space that's free of monster spawn. So the safe zone is where people can stay and not have monsters spawn in their homes, basically. There are also limited resources for people as the normal food and water distribution channels are broken down. When you combine that with a constant threat from monsters with limited resources, you get a nice zombie apocalypse feel and tension to the story. So if you ever read like a zombie apocalypse story, or even like end of the world apocalypse stories, something bad happens that kind of changes the world forever for everybody. Whether it's electricity, all the electricity turns off, or there's a nuclear bomb that, wipes out parts of the country's infrastructure system, or it's a zombie apocalypse, whatever it is, the normal way the world works ends. And that happens here. In this particular case, it's the RPG apocalypse, I guess. But that same kind of concept of, can no longer just go to the grocery store and expect food to be there, fresh food to be there. People aren't delivering groceries anymore. Most vehicles don't even work in this world. And so there is that limited resource survival aspect of the story where people vie for these limited resources. And then there's also, of course, the danger from monsters. In the case, in the zombie apocalypse, it would be zombies that you have to fight against and other humans who are trying to get your stuff. In this case, it's a variety of different monsters of various levels trying to attack you and kill you and eat you. And you, of course, in turn attacking them and gaining resources from them like food, meat, experience points. And so that's the survival aspect of this other story, which is really kind of the big feature of it. It's cool. It's in detail. There is that same sense of tension you would get from like a zombie apocalypse novel. And that's kind of the biggest draw of the story for me. Now, the RPG adventure stuff. This world is run like an RPG. Levels, stats, classes, experience points, quests, skills, the whole shebang. And while there are several ways of getting experience points, you can kill monsters, you can complete quests, and you can craft as just a couple. There's no doubt that the people of this world need to level and become more powerful. And so you have to go on adventures. You have to go kill monsters. And there is a risk of dying there because there is no respawn here. There's a point where people can be healed, of course. There's magic and everything. But once you die, you die. So there's definite risk and stakes here. But it is also part of that, XP grinding aspect. Okay, now community building. Again, I talked about the few safe points in this world where the main character lives. And of course, those other people who are survivors in this world, they start to build communities around these safe zones. And normal people have to kind of build a community. That's figure out how to complete community projects because, again, infrastructure is falling apart. How to feed everybody, how to keep them safe from monsters. And because the main character, John, has an information source they don't about the game system, he kind of plays a pivotal role earlier on in helping to develop these communities and figure out their priorities. That goes away a little bit later as they start to develop on their own. But there's definitely a big building a community. The same way in a zombie apocalypse, it would be about, finding a safe place away from the zombies and finding a group of people you can work with and live with and, survive within the zombie apocalypse. But in this case, it's RPG apocalypse. Okay. One of the few things I think the novel lacks is a clear direction. And this is kind of the same criticism I had of A Healer's Choice, which is the author's other novel on Amazon, is that there's no clear place that this is going. It's just, it's kind of like, this is what the main character is doing today. These are the adventures, daily adventures of this character. And that's fine. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing bad about it in any way, shape, or form. I like this novel, to be clear. But your mind tends to wander a little, wondering, where is this going occasionally? For example, in a zombie apocalypse story, which I'm a big fan of as well, those stories all usually have a purpose, whether it's to build a community to survive this apocalypse thing, or to, one main character has to find his family who's far away, help them, and save them from the potential bad things in the apocalypse, or somebody's trying to find a zombie apocalypse cure or whatever it is, and none of that kind of exists here. I mean, to a degree, the survival stuff is kind of a goal, but that's more of a day-to-day thing of like, I need to eat, I need to get XP, I need to gain levels to live on a daily basis. There's no long-term goal within the novel at this point. Maybe there is for some future editions of the book, but in this particular novel, there doesn't seem to be that kind of purpose in it at this point. So other than that, but it's a small detail. I just would have loved to have seen, like, have some kind of foreshadowing saying, oh, this is where the story is going to go at some point. And, there's a huge big threat, or there's some big plan, whatever the case is. Okay. Also, the emotional development of the main character really doesn't happen until like the last 5% of the story. And when it happens, it's really well written. I'm not saying it's not, but it kind of happens late in the story. And I thought that was a little odd. Overall, good read. There's lots of action, good game mechanics, nice survivalist twist to the story, which is kind of the big draw. Gets a score of 7 out of 10. Okay, on to Dream 3, Winds of Souls. It's the third book in the Dream Trilogy series, written by R.W. Capone. I'm saying that right. Okay, I will read you the author's description. What if legends aren't really legends? What happens when pixels and imagination dice are replaced with steel, flesh, and arcane power? Shad, Derek, Fred, and Jeff are just ordinary guys. They did their time in Iraq, hold regular jobs, and spend some of their free time playing RPGs on their game platforms and at the table. Until they were shanghaied into a place where magic and mystics had been banished from Earth. Eventually, with great difficulty, they returned home and got got on with their lives only to be blackmailed into returning again. They chose to pursue their blackmail into another sphere or alternative world. This one is Emily Nippon or the Edo period, albeit with influences from other cultures and a heavy necromancer presence. Once again, the Black Talons bickering and insulting each other, all the while must find and confront those who would use them for their own nefarious plots. Cecil intends to summon the winds of souls, and the Fours are determined to stop him, if nothing more than for revenge. In a land of the samurai, and the four Texans must learn patience, subtlety, and a new way of looking at things. Once again, they are not the biggest or the brightest on the game board, but as usual, they are undeterred. Okay, this novel is 289 pages. It is $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Price is spot on. This is easily one of the best squad-based military LitRPG series that I've ever read. The third book in the series continues the tradition of action and adventure in this one. Again, this time the Black Talon, that's the name of the gaming group, and the group of those four friends who are military veterans. And they find themselves in a world with a kind of ancient Japanese vibe to it. There's a lot of other influences there, but that's the kind of the theme of this particular story. They're hunting down the sorcerer Cecil as he attempts to do some bad things, and they're going to try to stop him. That's kind of the gist for me. At the beginning of the novel, there's a really nice recap what happened in book 1 and 2, plus a reminder who everybody is. So while you could jump into the series in the third book and have a decent understanding of what's going on, if you read books 1 and 2, you're going to appreciate some of the subtle jokes and inside kind of references that are there. The Black Talons, again, when they're transported into these worlds, they're basically game worlds. And each time they go into a world, they get to choose a new class. They get to choose, in this particular case, they keep their levels from the last world because it's very much, they were brought into the system against their will in book 2, and they've transferred from that game world to a different game world in book 3. And so here they got to choose their new classes based upon this kind of Asian theme. I'll tell you what they do. Shad is a Panatico. I'm probably not saying that right, but he deals in curses, spirits, and the undead. He's a warder. Fred is a Lamond. He's a healer and jinxer. He uses charms and range spells. Derek is a samurai. That one's pretty straightforward. He's an upper class, though, so there are actually class considerations here. And Jeff is a combo. A personal servant to Derek, but he's also combines bodyguard and valet services, so he's also a kind of a frontline fighter. And this is definitely an RPG just because it's as they gain experience when they fight monsters, they get new levels and they get new ranks and they can choose new abilities. And so it's definitely an RPG mechanic. It is a little more dulled or less numbery than in other stories, but you still get that same progression within a defined game mechanic system that everybody uses in this world. So there you go. One of the things I really enjoy about the series is just the relation between these four guys. They are friends. They are all veterans together. They were in the same squad in Iraq, and when they came back, they remained friends. So they have that background of influence to kind of draw back on. At the same time, they also are complete jerks to each other, but it's that friendly kind of teasing and joking and insulting that people do. And while I can't necessarily relate to that, I can understand what it means socially and friend wise. Also, their roles within the group are super well defined. Like because they've already worked in a squad in a military base, and in real life, they already kind of know their defined roles. Who's going to be the damage dealer? Who's going to be the tank? Who's the healer? Who's a range combat? Whatever the case is. And so they go into this novel already defined and already realizing what their roles are going to be, and that definitely plays into their combat style as well. And so they're, like I said, squad-based LitRPG. This is one of the most detailed, written, and kind of conversational driven versions of that I've ever seen, and it's really good. I enjoy it a lot. There's also a lot of great world building in the story. You can tell that the author did a ton of research on Asian, Japanese, Pacific Islander cultures, and kind of meshed them well together. There's a really defined social class system in this world that is realistic. It's stratified. The customs of this world are really well defined and interesting just on its own. I would have just enjoyed reading this as a fantasy novel, but it's a LitRPG novel, so I enjoy it a lot more. So a lot of fun stuff there. And without reading the story, there's a ton of action. The team makes their way through this world, figuring out their culture, and also figuring out what Cecil's plans are. There's a lot of fighting and adventure and conversation between the characters. There's betrayals, plots, side plots, all the good stuff. But the main focus of the story is, of course, killing Cecil or disrupting his plans. And these guys are really tenacious. That's kind of they're not super smart. They're not the most powerful, but they are tenacious and they'll get the job done. So it's fun to read. Overall, good read. Satisfying conclusion. It may also be the end of the series. It's a little unclear. I'm not going to spoil the ending because it's kind of sad. But for me, enjoyable. Gets a score 7 out of 10. Okay, on to Times of Change, Emerialia Book 6. This one is, I'll read the author description. As the Exterminators come into a time of peace, they're set upon building up their guild hall and getting back to raiding. Without the worries of immediate battles and constant quests, Dave and Party Zero are free to pursue their passions. New discoveries that we made, advances taken. They've got big plans and ideas for the future that they start now to form and that will shape the future. In this time of change, possibilities will rise and opportunities will be grasped. It's time to build for the future. Okay, so right there, the author kind of tells you what the story is about. It is 448 pages, $4.98, available on Kindle Unlimited. Spot on for the price for me. Now, in the last novel, just to give you a little background, there was a huge epic battle that resolved some land-selling plot lines. So it's not surprising that in this one, this is kind of a preparation novel. And the author basically tells you that in the description. It spends most of its time preparing for the characters in the story to face off against the hugely dangerous creatures and battles coming up in Book 8. That doesn't mean it's not a good story or that there aren't any good fights. It just means that more time is spent on other things than like big epic battles necessarily. I describe the novel as a combination of grinding out levels and gaining combat experience for the main factions. Some awesome fights, just a couple though. Some amazing creations that Dave has and plans he has for the future. Those are pretty awesome to me. And some updates on some larger plot lines and some personal ones as well. And an introduction of a couple new characters. That's kind of what the story is. Like, if you skip the story, I don't know that you wouldn't be able to read number 8. Know what I mean? This story is a ton of preparation. And if you like that kind of stuff, if you like grinding stories, or if you're just in it for the combat system, or you're just in it for the crafting stuff, which I am sometimes, this is still going to be enjoyable for you. But don't expect like huge, amazing battles like you got in the book, in the last book, or that you're probably going to get in the next book. Okay. The big additions of the story are that there are 3 new beings of power that are released that mostly don't get dealt with here. There is one epic battle scene with one of them. It's kind of a short fight scene, but one of those 3, beings of power is dealt with. But that's kind of one of the only big, huge, epic fight scenes in the story. There are also updates in the storylines with the space humans, the dragons, the gods, and the dwarven tournament. So there you get that. However, the thing I really enjoyed the most was reading about the new inventions that Dave has come up with. I mean, there are some truly awesome stuff there, but I won't spoil most of them, that aren't just for the immediate fights, but also stuff that's meant for the long-term fights with the Jugal Empire that I think are going to be kind of cool. And it's getting a little more sci-fi-ish, not just fantasy. And this one's kind of a spoiler, so skip ahead of like a second if you don't want to spoil it. But one of the things that Dave makes that I really loved was magical power armor. I mean, that alone was worth the price of admission for me, just to see, freaking magical power armor show up in the story and for it to be viable and useful and it's a little OP, but not that much. But I thought it was kind of cool. And it's amazing the stuff that the author comes up with that combines like sci-fi and fantasy, or just like magically powered science, I guess, if you want to call it that. Overall, had a good read. I'm expecting some really epic fights in Book 8. This one was good though. Gets a score of 7 out of 10. There you go. Okay, next story from the Bowels of Hounds, Creatures in Caverns short story written by Robert Bevan. It is 42 pages, $2.09. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. This is my review is probably almost as long as the novel. Joking, but it's a short story, so I can't really say too much without spoiling too many plot lines. But I'll give you the beginning of it. The team completes an escort mission in the pouring rain to a curious tower. The owner, an eccentric count, has hellhounds as guard dogs and a necromancer for a cook. Will Cooper's poor charisma score or Tim's drunken antics get the group in trouble? You bet. But that's half the fun. And from there, situations arise, adventure, comedy, potty humor, all that stuff happens there. Price-wise, it's rather expensive. For 42 pages, for $2.99, that's expensive. But the author is actually, this is, I think, one of the first novels that he's done this with. For the short stories anyways, he's put it up on Kindle Unlimited. So that kind of negates any kind of risk you might take. If you've read the Creatures in Caverns series, or the Critical Failures, as they're called, as they're titled, these are those same main characters. They're just doing standalone independent novel adventures, and they're super funny. Like every single one of these short stories that I purchased and read, I've never personally regretted buying them or reading them, because I like those characters. They're funny. Yes, they're irreverent and they curse a lot and they use a bunch of potty humor, but that appeals to me and I enjoy it. But with these stories being unlimited, there's really no reason for you not to read it if you're familiar with these characters. I would recommend that you've read at least book 1 to kind of get a feel for who these guys are and why they're in this fantasy world. But I guess you don't technically have to. Like, it's still fun, goofy, idiot humor from these dudes. If you like that stuff. So there you go. I enjoy it. Good length. This one's funny like the rest of them. I give it a score of 7 out of 10. Okay. Next one, DLC A LitRPG Adventure, The Crucible Shard, Book 6, written by Skylar Grant. I'll read you the author description. King Liam has faced many foes since taking the throne, but this one is more personal than most. The god Veros is one of the artificial intelligence from Earth and has been hatching plans and building his base of power for a very long time. The struggle shall make all those involved reconsider who they truly are and make hard choices for the days to come. So there you go. It is 213 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Again, slightly more than I normally pay, but it's on Kindle Unlimited. So there you go. Now, I'll have to admit that this series is not for everybody. The first book in this series, super amazing. I think everybody will enjoy it as a general RPG story. But then as the series progressed, they got crazier and crazier and a little bit weirder and weirder. There's a bunch of time travel stuff, dimensional jumps, people shifting personalities. And so I think a lot of people, I don't know if everybody continued with the series, to be honest. I have, because I'm willing to go along on this weird journey, just because the author keeps making the stories interesting and he keeps introducing new kind of game systems, like little kernels of it in there. And this one is no different. But in this way, in this particular novel, the author really does return with some consistency in the weirdness, if I want to say that way. The novel is still very weird, but it's consistently weird in the exact same way. So there is dimensional hopping, but there's no time travel. There's no like shifting personalities necessarily that kind of make you like, you just ruin the entire earlier part of the story. None of that happens here. It's very consistent in its weirdness, I guess. So there you go. The first 2% of this novel is a nice recap of the last 5 books. The author literally does book 1, this is what happened, book 2, book 3, book 4, whatever, book 5. So that way you can kind of understand the journey that the characters have been in without getting into too much detail about all the weird things that have changed. I'm not going to summarize what happened in the last 5 books, but one of the big things in the last book happened was that Liam became king of the world, and he also gained this power called mind games. That lets him enter people's minds to see their secrets. And this new power is probably the thing I like the most about the story, because every time he enters someone's mind, he activates a new mini game world. And the author uses that as a way to kind of break up the stream of fights in the story and tell little mini LitRPG adventure stories. I especially like the one where Liam has to solve a murder mystery, Ace Attorney Phoenix Wright style. And I thought that was kind of cool. And just kind of a break from the normal style of the story. And I thought it was a really cool little mechanic that gave you like a different kind of RPG, game within a larger story. So there you go. Now the villains that need to be featured in the story are really all identified up front in the beginning of the story. There are 9 demigods that are artificially created, assassins from unknown factions, the Dark Court, and the Veros, the Mad God. So these are really identified as, these are the people we have to beat by the end of the story. And the author is pretty straightforward about it. So I'm assuming that they're all going to be dealt with by the end of the series, which is upcoming apparently. Now this particular novel, the team plans on taking out the Dark Court and Veros, the Mad God, who have imported some land from another dimension that they live on, and Liam names it, who's the main character, DLC. And of course, when they travel there on their airship, they have to pay to get through the magical barrier, the magical wall, to get to the DLC. Get it? There's a paywall to get to the DLC. It's a joke. But I thought it was really funny to me. I laughed a lot when I read it. Now, as soon as they land, the story changes into this kind of weird, yet fun, Alice in Wonderland / fairy tale office story, where Liam and the rest of the team have lost their memories and are working for the DLC Corporation. Liam and Yevi, who's the human incarnation of the goddess, the fire goddess, they're salesmen, and they use their sexual prowess to make a lot of sales. Ashley's in counting, Walt is someone's assistant, and from there it's a battle not only get everyone's memories back, but fight with all sorts of fairy tale themed monsters, including Goldilocks 3 bears in mech suits, 7 murderous doors, and the big bad wolf himself. And there's a ton more. I don't want to spoil all of them, but they're fun, interesting stories and action and fight scenes. And of course, it all culminates with a big battle with Veros himself, which is a battle to the death. So there is resolution there. I think at the very, very end, there were some nice twists that the author did that I wasn't expecting, but I should have seen coming. And overall, I had a good time reading it. And this one actually makes more sense than the last couple that were just odd, and that he used a lot of time travel dimensional tropes to change and shape the story. And that's the author's right to do so. I'm not saying it's not, but I think it threw a lot of people off in that it shifted a lot of the previous story that came before and almost seemed to ruin it in some ways. But this one is just pretty straightforward and it's consistent. And I think people who like past stories may still enjoy this one. So there you go. And the author does say that I think he's only doing a couple more books in the series, so it's actually going to have an end. For me, I had a good time reading it. Gets a score of 7 out of 10. Okay, on to The Last Redoubt, a LitRPG adventure Unity series book written by Isra. Oh dear, Boothimethephi. Look, I'm not trying to say it incorrectly. You'll have a picture of it so you can see it yourself, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it. Okay, author's description. Join Tamara Alkins, bard in training, blacksmith, and reluctant adventurer as she stumbles upon plots and invasions dungeons. All she wants to do is become a full-fledged bard and make cool weapons and armor for her friends and family. However, an ancient enemy gathers and kingdoms plot, and only one hero and her companion can choose between salvation and utter destruction. So there you go. Now, this is a female main character in the story. It's listed on Amazon as 689 pages. I think that might be incorrect. I used a program to transcribe it into like a MOB file, and it came out as like 358 pages. So there might be some difference there, but it is $3.98. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. So either way, price-wise, it's appropriately priced, and it is on Kindle Unlimited, so a lot of people can take a chance on it as well. There are some really cool story ideas in the story again, but they're not really developed well. For example, there's an idea in the story of AI cores being involved from old nano programs, and that magic in this world is actually just an extension of ununderstood or a lost understanding of a form of technology. And those are cool story ideas, but they're not really developed, and they're really lost on a main character who has everything handed to her. And that's kind of the really big flaw in the story, for me at least, is that everything that happens to the main character, all the benefits that she gets, all the power increases that she gets, levels, experiences, points, spells, whatever the case, everything seems to be just given to her. Like she's just walking along. Oh, here's a new AI. I'm walking along. Oh, here's a whole city of advanced technology. And oh, you like that boy over there? Oh, look, he suddenly falls in love with you and leaves his ex-girlfriend, whatever the case is. And it's fine. Like I said, the game mechanics and story are interesting. I really do think that there was a lot of story potential, but it's just that it was never really developed. Some other ideas in the story that I thought were cool, but just not really developed, is kind of the fundamental concept that this world is kind of an outgrowth of advanced technology where civilization was kind of had to start over, but they still have the same kind of fundamental technology, and that AIs are permeating the world, they're just not seen. And so there's a whole class of individuals called the Awakened that can see things like character sheets, stats. They can see experience points. They can see other class skills and item descriptions. But the other people who aren't aware or awakened, they don't see in that stuff, so they don't really believe it. So they may use the same phrases, but it's because they can't see that same data, they don't have the same access to that world information. They're actually considered a lower class of people because they can't develop as much. Even if they're both adventurers, the person who has more information can plan better, they can do more development. You know what I mean? And so that kind of stratification of the society it's a really cool idea. It's just, again, not really developed very much in the story. Now, the main character, Tamara, happens to find a fallen spaceship. She's saved by a robotic guard dog by a suddenly awakened core within herself. Actually, an artificial intelligence AI that was apparently implanted in her at birth, but only now awoken when her life was in danger. And he just happens to give her just the abilities to trash this robotic dog that's just about to kill her. I mean, the AI literally gives her berserker rage, and he slows down time so that she can just murder this dog, which she wasn't doing any damage to. So that's one of the very first examples of like, oh, this character's not earning anything. She's literally being given the powers that she needs to defeat this, creature, this thing that's endangering life. And that's a theme throughout the story. On her way to tell the king about this fallen spaceship, she agrees to guard a caravan that just happens to lead her to a secret pre-cataclysm facility full of advanced technology, manufacturing facilities, advanced laser and plasma weapons, and of course, she's the only one that can open the place up because of her artificial intelligence. And of course, everyone in the caravan, all the grown-ups, she's 16 years old, they want her to run the place and establish a town. Literally, they want to place the 16-year-old girl they just met days ago as the leader of this community. And it's things like that make me go like, okay, kind of groan a little bit and like, okay, that doesn't seem likely, but we'll put it aside. But it keeps happening again. Just the guy she happens to fall in love with eventually falls back in love with her, Lisa's girlfriend, who happens to be described as a very loose woman. And she's eventually turned into this major bad guy. But I think it was very curious that the main character's one adversary in the story happens to be a girl that whose look she's a little bit jealous of, but who's also described as essentially sleeping around with the other characters and being exiled from the community because of it. I'm like, that's a story choice, but it does show, it does kind of reflect a certain mentality of potentially of the story, which didn't appeal to me necessarily. And of course, by the end of the story, she's literally beats an entire Ark army by herself, except for the one girl who kidnaps her and who happens to be that one girl she was jealous over. So there you go. Overall, the game mechanics are actually, they're fine. There's leveling, there's class skills, there's a bunch of magic systems, and I get a lot of cool story potential ideas there that just really weren't developed, or at least they were kind of ruined for me because of the way that the main character progressed, how everything was kind of handed to her. So for me, overall, this kind of meh gets a score of 5 out of 10. So there we go. On to, last but not least, Codename Freedom Survive Week 1. This podcast is getting long, folks. It is written by Apollos Thorne. Okay. I will read you the author's description. It is... Let's see, here we go. War is coming. The government must accelerate their super soldier program. I'm not going to read it. It's really long. I just realized that. Or do my description of it. It is 379 pages. It is $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. So this is actually really on the nose as well. Now, the main character, Lucius, is a programmer in a world of advanced technology. There are AIs. There are other, virtual reality games out in the world. So it's set into the future. However, he is selected for a year-long beta test of the most advanced gaming system ever. He jumps at the chance. And it's actually described in the story as the world's most advanced social experiment by the government, but it's essentially a beta version of like a game system. What he doesn't know, and he won't learn until he's inside the game, is that the pain settings for the system are set at 100%, which means that any pain he feels in the game, it will actually feel real. And that the government has an ulterior motive for testing these players. The jux of the question for the main character essentially is that, will he find the strength to keep playing and defend his starter city from the hordes of monsters that are threatening it? Or will he jump out of the game and quit because of the nature of the game, where he's literally feeling every stab, every bone break, every cut of a blade in combat? And it introduces a lot of cool mechanics and ideas in the story that I thought were really nice. Originally, this is a hobby project from the author on the Royal Road. He says it in like descriptions online of it, from Apollos Thorne. However, he actually took that base story, that rough draft that he'd written over years potentially, and he developed into a series of full-fledged novels. And I gotta admire the tenacity of somebody who does that, who turns essentially just this thing they do for fun into something that they can put online and be proud of, and actually turn into a bestseller novel on Amazon, which it currently is. So great congratulations to you, Apollos. I'm proud of you, buddy. He's a friend of the podcast as well. But for me, this is the definite read. It's really enjoyable. And go pick it up on Amazon. Even if you read it on the Road as this rough draft version, there are enough changes in the story to still make it interesting to reread it on Amazon personally. So overall, really, it's a really good story. Even though the novel only covers the first week of the player's in-game experience, and online it's a much bigger novel system. This story is still packed with action. Each and every night and day, the players must defend their starter town from hordes of increasingly difficult goblin raids. And again, the real big draw of this particular section of the story, or this particular novel, is that 100% pain setting. Everything that the players do in combat in other stories is all that pain is muted. So they don't really have to face the immediate physical consequences of fighting fantasy creatures. And in this particular story, the author takes a really realistic approach to combat, and essentially tests each character's commitment to this kind of game. Because we all kind of dream about, falling into a virtual reality game or being ported to a game where there's RPG mechanics. But if we still had to face the same levels of pain in combat we would in our regular world in fighting and in growing more powerful, the question kind of remains, would we still want to do it, or would we quit and choose a different life for ourselves? And that's kind of the story, that's kind of the question that the main character is forced to address for himself. Because again, he is a programmer, but he's used to playing games where pain isn't an issue, where he just has to focus on strategy and game mechanics. And that's not the case here in this world. In this particular world, skills and fighting techniques have to be learned. Nothing is handed to you. There's no hotkey system where you can just press a button and automatically do a thing. No one starts out using their weapons well or armor well. Everybody has to learn how to actually use it as if it was a real world. The main character chooses to be a spear and shield wielder, which is on the cover, so I'm not spoiling anything. And he has to figure out how to use these weapons effectively. And he kind of sucks at first, but he does gain skills in through use. Another thing about this combat system and the game world in general is that it slowly introduces the game mechanics as the character's level, which is a different way of approaching this kind of game world. And each time the level, the characters can actually choose to have what kind of interfaces appear within their system. So as the character's level, they get abilities, skills, which can allow them to start doing grouping mechanics, where they can form groups and share experience points and start to maybe later on do group chat systems. But it's always a choice for the main character or for the characters on how gamified they want the role to be. It doesn't change the fundamental reality of having to physically wield something and stick it into a monster and being cut and killed and having broken bones and blood go everywhere when you're in combat against an enemy. None of that changes, but it's the perception that gradually change for the main characters and how they see the world. Eventually, depending on the choices, the characters can get really detailed character sheets where they can see specifically, these are all the things that affect myself, but they don't have to necessarily. They can choose to spend those points instead on something like a pet that'll give them better awareness of the worlds around them potentially. And so there are a lot of game choices, but I thought it was a really interesting application of game system mechanics. So I thought that was kind of cool too. Overall, again, this is I enjoy the story a lot. I was sort of spoiled, and I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much as somebody who came to it the very first time they read it, because I've read the online version, and it goes beyond the first week. And so I didn't see things in this novel that I was hoping to see, which I'm not going to spoil for anybody, but you're going to see in book 2 or 3 or whatever. So for me, it isn't quite as enjoyable as I was hoping it was going to be. For anybody who's never read this story before, they're going to really enjoy it. It's fun, it's interesting, and it's again one of the more realistic approaches to combat that I've seen in a LitRPG story. So I had a really good time with it. Again, in book 2, there are hints that there are bigger things coming, so be aware of that. Overall, again, a good action-filled combat story, and I read it in a single sitting, which should tell you something. Even though I've already read it twice on the Road, I still read it again in one sitting. It's one of those novels that you're just it's a page turner. So there you go. For me, I get score 7 out of 10. I enjoyed it. And again, it didn't get 8 just because I didn't see some of the things I would have liked to have seen, like skill trainers and some short stories. But again, it was still enjoyable. If this is your first time reading it, you're going to think it's great, to be honest. At least I hope you do, because I enjoyed it. And I'm going to have a link in the show notes for the rough draft version of the story if you want to read ahead and see what may be happening. So there you go. That's it, everybody. We're done. It's a slightly longer episode because I had a lot to say, I guess. But that's it. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon. And of course, if you enjoy the podcast and you want to support us in any way, shape, or form, you can find all the ways to do so at litrpgpodcast.com/support. Again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging out with me. It's always so much fun to gush about this thing that I love, LitRPG. And until we can hang out again, remember, folks, to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.